Okay, everyone. I want to welcome you all to another Wednesday evening Zoom class. I'm Bhavani Jaroff of iEat Green, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. Many of you are good friends, family, and just people who want to learn about good cooking. So I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to be making a miso vegetable chowder, and miso soup is, for me as a vegetarian, it's my chicken soup. You know, you always hear people when they're sick, they, want to make some chicken soup. Well, if you're a vegetarian, miso soup is that for you. And it's such an immune booster. And during this COVID-19, anytime I'm feeling sick, of course, we're all paranoid that we're going to get it. So I just, make a big pot of miso soup. And so before the weather got too hot, I thought it would be a great opportunity to share my miso soup with you. It's something I always just wing it, and I never really wrote it down. So I wrote it down for this purpose. And you can feel free to add whatever vegetables you love, whatever vegetables you have. I do a few things different. I do add wakame, which is a seaweed, and I'll tell you about that in a bit. I have ramen noodles. The ramen noodles I have are gluten-free. They're made with millet and brown rice, whatever ramen noodles you like. And I also saute up some shiitake mushrooms, and I put those on top as a garnish, and that just adds a real umami deepness to the dish. So we're going to get started. I also am sharing with you my balsamic vinaigrette recipe, because soup and salad go together. And so often people make these beautiful salads, and then they buy store-bought salad dressing and put it on. And it's just so easy to make your own salad dressing. And people love my salad dressing, so I thought I'd show you how to make it, because I'm telling you, it whips up so quickly, especially if you have one of these little devices, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. So first, you want to fill a pot with 12 cups of water. It cooks down a little bit. You can always add more water if you want. Or you can boil the water away if you think it's too much soup, but start with 12 cups of water. We're going to turn that on. And the things that are going to go into your soup we're going to start with your root vegetables. And anytime you're cooking, I say this every time, and if I sound like a broken record, please forgive me. But you always want to start with your root vegetables. They take the longest to cook. And so I'm just going to move this to the side for now. They take the longest to cook, and so you want to start with those. So the water's on to boil. You don't have to saute any of this ahead of time, other than we'll be sauteing the mushrooms on the side. Let me get my knife. Okay, so I'm going to start with my onion. For this soup, I usually cut my onion in crescent moon shape. To do that, I take off both ends. I cut the onion in half so that the onion can lie flat and won't wiggle around while I'm cutting it. You want to take the skin off. And chopping vegetables is one of the things that really gets easier and easier the more you do it. And for vegetarian cooking, that's the part that's the most time consuming, is really prepping the vegetables. And like anything, practice makes perfect. So I really encourage you to keep practicing. I'm going to put my little compost bucket right here. If it's in your way, let me know. So when you are cutting the onions, you want to lie them flat. Use your finger as the guide, all right, so that your knuckle becomes the template to which you are going to lie your knife right up against. And so when you're moving your knife back, you're actually moving your finger back all along the onion like this. Can you all see that? So you just move your your index finger, you keep moving it back, and the knife just keeps going up and down. And that way you are cutting these perfectly thin, beautiful crescent moon shaped onion pieces that you're going to be able to put right into the soup water right there. I'm going to do the other one. Wow. The onion, garlic, ginger, all of that is giving the broth the flavor that will be the base of the soup. Okay, so put it right into the soup. And even though the water's not boiling yet, it's okay. If you're sauteing, you don't ever want to add onions to a cold pan with cold oil. But for soup, it doesn't really matter. So then you want to peel your carrots and your parsnips. You can also scrub them. I mean, a lot of the nutrients are in the skin. Many people like to just scrub them. Personally, I like the look of it peeled, and I'm a very visual person, so that's why I peel it. So I just take the skin off, right, like this. All this goes into the compost. And I have a big compost outside that I'm constantly adding to, and that compost goes from my small little thing here outside to a bigger one, and then it actually goes to a really big one out in my garden where I actually layer it with the food scraps, with leaves, with wood chips, with horse manure, and then another layer of vegetables, leaves, wood chips, and I just do it like that. And then I let it sit for almost a year and let it get really hot so it kills all the weeds so I don't have seeds in my compost. And it really feeds my plants well. Okay, so for soup, you have a choice of what shape vegetable you want. What I don't really love is I don't love soup with little rounds of carrots in it. I find chunky carrots much more pleasing to eat. According to macrobiotics, it actually releases more energy this way. So you just constantly turn the carrot. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm just turning the carrot and cutting the carrot so that there's many facets to each slice of carrot. And it makes a really nice chunk and is very pleasing to eat. So this is the carrots, and I'm going to put those right in.
Wow.
And, you know, I talk about energy in food a lot because I really believe in it. I believe that when you're cooking food and you're putting your love into the food, that the food actually imparts your love, and that is nourishing in itself. And so sometimes, you know, if you need some comfort food, I mean, something that might not be the most healthy thing, but if you've made it and it has all this love in it and you're giving it to a child and it's making them so happy, that has a lot of value too. So, you know, I'm all for eating healthy food, and every once in a while you might have something that might not be considered so healthy, but if it's made with love, it still can be very nourishing. So I'm going to put those carrots right in. I'm going to do the same thing with the parsnips. I'm going to peel them slightly. And parsnips are unbelievably delicious. You should try just roasting parsnips. I roast parsnips and carrots in the oven. They're so delicious. They get really sweet. And I'm getting some feedback on the sound. I'm not sure why. So if everyone just mutes your speaker, that's better now. Okay. So again, I'm going to cut those chunks. Just keep turning the parsnip so you get these nice little chunky pieces. Seaweeds are another really wonderful ingredient to use. Seaweeds are very high in iron, very high in calcium. They're just so good for you, and there's so many different ones. When I'm cooking beans, I always want to add kombu into the beans. I know I've shared with you before, when I buy canned beans, I like to buy Eden brand because that's the only one that actually uses kombu in with the cooking of the beans, and that makes you less gassy. And so people really appreciate that. But it also adds a lot of umami and nutritional value to the beans. So it's really a great thing. So we're going to be putting some wakame into this soup. So I'm just going to turn my water on to boil. This is how wakame comes. It comes in a little package, and they're really tiny little pieces, and you're going to be amazed at how they blow up. Let me show you what they look like. It's just all these little pieces like this. When you soak them in water, they reconstitute and become quite large, and they're delicious in the soup. So I'm going to get a measuring spoon out. I think in the recipe I said just 2 tablespoons, and you'll see, let's see what I said. Wakame, 2 tablespoons, yeah. So you'll see how it blows up and gets really big. But this has a great shelf life also. It stays on in your cabinet for a really long time. And so it's wonderful to just have there. You can throw it into any soup that you're making. And it adds nutritional value, it adds umami, great flavor to it. Okay, my water's boiling, so I'm just going to cover.
Bhavani, what brand do you use of the Wakame?
There's many different ones. This is Emerald Cove. And this is coming from, I believe Emerald Cove is coming from Maine. Yeah, it's coming from the eastern border, so it's coming from Maine. I actually, a lot of the seaweeds, after Fukushima, I really was hesitant buying Pacific Coast seaweed because I felt like it could be radioactive and I didn't feel confident buying that. So I really started buying more Atlantic seaweed. So, there's so many things in our food system that we have to think about that you just don't think you need to think about, but we do need to think about it. Nothing's perfect. We just try to balance and do the best we can. So anyway, this is the wakame. You can see it's already exploding. I'm just going to let it sit over here on the side, and we'll be adding it to the soup. We'll drain it and then add it to the soup in a little bit. So my carrots, onions, parsnips are in there. I'm going to also add the tofu. Now, tofu comes in silken tofu, which is really custard-like. You can also get soft tofu, which is very similar to the silken, or you can get firm tofu and extra firm tofu. Usually when I'm stir frying, I'm always going for extra firm tofu. I find it holds together best for stir frying. Tofu, as you know, has no flavor of its own, so it really takes on whatever you are giving it, and it also will take on the texture of how you prepare it. So I actually chose silken tofu. Firm tofu would also be fine in the soup. But silken tofu, in a lot of Japanese restaurants, when you get miso soup, they're using the silken tofu. It's very custard-like and it's very soft. And so I'm just going to open up this package and drain the water out first. Now, silken tofu is also the tofu of choice if you're making any type of custard desserts. Like if I'm making my chocolate mousse pie, and I'm using tofu as the base, I use silken tofu because it will be the creamiest. And you want to get it out of the container. Normally when you're cooking with tofu, a lot of times you want to put it onto a paper towel or a dish towel so you can absorb the water. When you're going right into soup, that's not so important, obviously. But you can see it's already falling apart. So you have to be very delicate with the silken tofu. It's very fragile. But I want to cut it into little cubes and add the cubes to the soup. I'm actually going to hold off actually putting it into the soup until a little bit later so that it doesn't fall apart while it's cooking. But while it cooks, it actually does get a little firmer. It takes on a little more of solidified shape in the cooking process. So I'm going to just put these cubes of tofu into the bowl. See, it's really messy. It's falling apart. It's extra soft.
Is there a particular brand of tofu that you like?
Whole Foods makes an okay tofu. There's when I get firm tofu, there's actually ones that are high protein that are really firm. And if I'm frying it up and making a sandwich with it, like I make a TLT sandwich where I fry the tofu and I bread it with some nutritional yeast. For that, I really like the extra firm tofu. And the high protein ones are great. But, Whole Foods makes a brand, Trader Joe's makes a brand. It really depends where I am as to which I buy. But the one thing you do want to make sure is that you're getting organic tofu. Soybeans are one of those crops that are all genetically modified unless they're organic. They are really, one of the crops along with canola, alfalfa, corn that are heavily genetically modified. So you do want to be mindful of making sure that you're getting organic.
Bhavani,
Yeah.
what is that surface you're cutting the tofu on?
I'm cutting on a wood cutting board.
No, right next to it, you were cutting on another surface. Yeah,
Oh, this
yeah.
right here, I put it on paper towel to absorb some of the water, but you don't really need to absorb the water because it's going right into water. You know, if I was making a dessert with it, I would want to absorb some of the water because I don't want it to be too watery. But for this, I didn't really need to do that. It's just out of habit. And the paper towel can go right into my compost, and that will break down too. So I'm just going to set this aside for a little while until I'm ready to add it. The soup is starting to go. What else are we going to be putting into the soup? We're going to put in some broccoli. Let me just wipe this counter a little bit better. So again, quantity is really up to you, and what vegetables you choose is up to you. I called for about 2 cups of broccoli florets in this recipe. I started to break it up a little bit just to get it into this bowl. But when I'm using broccoli, I use the whole broccoli. I like the stem a lot, but you do need to take off the outer skin if you're going to use the stem, because that can be tough. And so you don't want to use that. But the stalks used to be my kid's favorite part. So I would just, peel it a little bit like this. Actually, before I do this, I do want to get ginger and garlic into the soup. I forgot that. So garlic, I buy cloves of garlic that are already peeled just because I'm lazy. And I use it so much and so fast. So it's a great way of buying garlic. I do not like the pre-chopped garlic that's in oil. They always put citric acid in it and it has a different flavor. It doesn't taste like fresh garlic does. But this fresh garlic tastes beautiful. I buy it from Whole Foods. It's organic. So I'm very happy with that. So I'm just going to put a handful in. I think I put down 5 cloves in the recipe, 6 cloves. I just put a handful in, probably a few more than that. The ginger, let me just move the broccoli to the side first. The ginger I want to get in also. For peeling ginger, there's so many different ways. Of course, you can use a peeler like this. A lot of people use the back of a spoon, which works really well. You can just kind of hold the garlic clove like this and use the back of a spoon. And if I have large pieces, I'll actually just use my knife, and I'll show you that as well. So you can use the back of the spoon like this. You do need to take the peel off. See, so I'll also do this. I'll use my knife. You might waste a little bit like this, but I'll do this a lot of times as well. So anyway, so you have pieces of ginger like this. You're going to just put chunks of ginger in because you're going to pull these out before you serve it. But the flavor is going to come off of that right into the soup. And I'm just lowering the soup so it's a simmer. Right now it's boiling away. And again, you will become familiar with how much ginger or garlic you want to put in. I usually put in a lot because, again, I'm making this as a medicinal soup. I want it to be delicious, but it's also very medicinal. The more ginger, more garlic you put in, the better it is for you. Both of those have healing properties to them. They really support your immune system. I'm sure you've all heard about drinking ginger tea anytime you have a sore throat or anything like that. People take garlic drops, tinctures, just to help fight off colds. So it's just great for you. So I'm just going to put all of this in.
So you brought it up to a hard boil to start with, and then you turned it down to a simmer, or was it supposed to be a simmer?
Exactly. Yep. So right now it's just simmering. I want it to still be it's a soft boil. I still want to be cooking the carrots and the onions because those you want to get soft before you add the other vegetables.
Did you want to hard boil at any time? I mean, was it supposed to boil fast to start with?
No, I just brought it to a boil to get the carrots and onions going.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you.
You don't want, actually, if you boil it too fast, you're going to lose a lot of the water. It's going to evaporate. You don't want that to happen. So you don't want it boiling too hard. So I'm going to put some more ginger in. You see, I'm putting in that whole piece. So it's more than I think I said on the recipe. What did I say on the recipe? I said 1 2 to 3 inch piece, and I'm probably putting in double that. So again, you can do whatever you like when it comes to how much ginger you put in, but I recommend putting in quite a bit if you have it, because it just adds such a great flavor to it. And we're going to go back to cutting up this broccoli now. So these you want to be bite-sized pieces. So the stems I'm going to cut at an angle like this. And then each of the pieces, this is perfect size right here. This one's a little bit big, so I'm going to cut this one in half. And make 2 pieces out. And you can kind of, let the broccoli kind of guide you. You can see where a natural cut would be from where you're divided already naturally. So you can just use that as a guide. Again, if you have a lot of stem, you want to peel it a little bit and take off the outside part. You can also add any other vegetables that you have in the house that you love. If you have cauliflower and you want to put that in, it's delicious, of course. Really, any vegetable in this soup works. And I called for 2 cups of broccoli, and I can tell that I have more than 2 cups here. And so if you add a lot more vegetables than what you actually need for the 12 cups of soup, you can just add more water. And because you're adding the miso directly to the soup or to each cup of soup, you can just keep adding more miso as you add broth. So sometimes I'll have so many vegetables in here, this broth is almost gone. I just add more water and let that cook a bit, and then add more miso, and I can keep extending the soup for days. So that's a really nice thing. So I'm going to just put this on the side because I don't want the broccoli to overcook. So I'm going to wait on putting that in. The broccoli, the napa cabbage, the bok choy, all those things are going to go in just towards the end because they don't take much time to cook, and we don't want them to overcook. I'm just going to put all this into my compost. Okay, the bok choy, they only had, this was the last bok choy. It was a huge one. So obviously I do not need all of this bok choy. So I'm just going to cut a little bit of it. You can cut the ends off of bok choy. Go right down the middle. Put this whole piece aside. And the cabbage, this napa cabbage, which is really Chinese cabbage, has so many great uses. It's great to just stew cabbage. It's great to additional light. It's great to add to any vegetable. To any stir fry. But it's also a wonderful salad. You can make, you can use this in with your salad, and it's wonderful. And it's actually great, even when you put dressing on, it's great the next day. It doesn't get wilty the way lettuce does. It really holds up more like a coleslaw, but it's delicious. So I'm gonna put cabbage in here, and I think this is gonna be plenty right here. I'm gonna put
Do
this
you
back.
use, do you use the green leaf part of the bok choy or just the white?
This is the napa cabbage, not the bok choy yet, but I use all of it. I use all of it.
Thank you.
And here's the bok choy right here. And the bok choy, I use all of it. The bottom, the lighter part, and the leaf. We're gonna do that as well. So all these things are gonna be ready to go. You're just gonna cut that up.
I'm trying to doctor this sauce up
Let's
a
put
little bit.
away the onions. Let me get a spoon and stir this up.
Garlic, and I'm putting some onion.
Okay, I'm actually gonna turn I have a pot of water on here that I'm gonna turn on for my ramen noodles, because I wanna get those cooking now also. The ramen noodles, I'm gonna put some salt into this water. Here's my salt. I have some
Yeah.
Himalayan sea salt right here. I'm just gonna add to the water.
I think it's outside.
Can someone mute their phone? I mean, please. Someone mute your speaker because I hear the sound.
Why don't we instead make some of this?
Can everyone mute their speaker? In the lower left corner,
But
in
don't
the
add
lower
this
left
sentence.
corner, there's an icon of a speaker. Just click that. Okay. Where's my cilantro? Here we go. This is my favorite salad spinner. Salad spinners come in handy for not only making salad, but anytime you're washing herbs. It has an insert right like this. And I put my cilantro directly in. I took the leaves. I separated the leaves from the stem. I washed them right in here. Took the water out. And this is a full string spinner. And it's the best one. It's much better than the kind that you spin or the kind that you pump, because it goes much quicker. So the force gets more of the water out, and it actually has a little brake on it to stop it. So this is the cilantro. Some people love cilantro, and some people really don't love cilantro. For some people, it tastes like soap, and it's really unfortunate because for those of us that appreciate cilantro, it's so delicious. So I'm going to chop up a little cilantro because that's going to be in my soup as some garnish on top. If you don't like cilantro, feel free.
Yeah.
Or just scallions. Scallions would be good as well.
She said I sent you the recipe. If you don't have the ingredients, you can just watch. I did not see the recipe, so I'm just watching.
Okay. If everybody, when people sign up, I send the recipe. So the earlier you sign up, the earlier you send the recipe. I'm gonna put my cilantro in this little cup here. That's gonna be a garnish too. Okay. So the other thing we're gonna do is taki mushrooms. If you're washing mushrooms, something really know is that you do not want
Oh,
to.
change the color of that pasta sauce.
Hmm.
It was like a dark red. Yeah.
For any mushrooms, you don't
Bright
want to
with
run
fresh
mushrooms.
It's like a red
water.
orange, yeah.
Excuse me, I'm hearing voices. Can you please mute your speaker so that I'm not hearing you? Thank you. So the mushrooms, you want to just wipe with a damp cloth, okay? You're gonna wipe the top and the bottom. The stems, you're actually gonna cut off. The stems you can save and put them into a stock for flavoring. But the stems, especially of shiitake mushrooms, are very tough. So they're not pleasant to eat. So you're gonna cut the stems off first. And I'm gonna just put them in my compost. And you could actually put them into the miso soup if you put them into wrap them up in some cheesecloth and put them in. You could have them in the soup for flavor. or if you're just making a stock. You know, a lot of times I'll save all of my ends of my vegetables, wash them well, and just make some stock and have stock in the refrigerator. You know, in the winter when I'm making a lot more soups, I'll try to do that. And that way, you know, when I'm finished making the stock, it's still, the ends still end up in the compost, but at first I get all the flavoring out of it. Okay, so all this is compost. Excuse me. And then I'm going to take my rag, just going to wipe all of the mushrooms. And because mushrooms are so porous, that's why you don't want to run them underwater, especially if you're going to saute them. If you're putting them in a soup and they're going to be immersed in water anyway, it doesn't really matter. But we're going to be sauteing these, and we actually want to get them crispy. They're going to be little pieces of umami into your soup. So I'm just going to wipe my cutting board here. Excuse me again. Okay, so we're going to lie the mushroom flat down, and we're just going to cut it into thin little slices like this. Please mute your speaker, everybody. Thank you. So I'm going to set my cast iron pot up, pan right here. I'm going to put a little olive oil in it. Let that get hot. Continue cutting my mushrooms. Now I have more mushrooms here than I need, so I'm not going to do any more than this. I'll save those. And when the oil gets hot, and you know the oil is getting hot, you start seeing it shimmer. I am going to add, do I want to add this yet? No, I'm going to wait a little bit. We're going to focus on the mushrooms right now. So I have some minced garlic and ginger right here. And this is what I use for mincing my garlic and ginger. And I've showed you this before if you've been watching these Zoom classes. But I'll show it to you when we're going to make the salad dressing in this device. But this is really one of the tools that I use every day, whether I'm mincing ginger, garlic, or whipping up a salad dressing, or making a little pesto, especially if you're just doing, there's just two of you at home, you don't need to use a whole big food processor. So this is just such a great, great device. Okay, so I'm seeing my oil shimmering now. I'm going to add the mushrooms, and you can hear the sizzle. And that you want to hear that when you add any type of vegetable to a pan with oil. If you don't hear sizzle, then the oil wasn't hot enough, and then the vegetable ends up absorbing the oil as opposed to it just coating the edge of it and getting it crisp. So in with this, we're going to add a spoonful of the ginger and the garlic. And the idea for these mushrooms, as I said before, is to get them kind of crispy. And they're going to be garnished on top of the soup. me show you the ramen noodles that we're going to be using today. This is Lotus Foods, is a wonderful brand. A small package of this, half the size of this package at Whole Foods, costs about the same size as this bigger package at Costco does. But it's organic, it's made with millet and brown rice, so it's gluten-free. They're delicious, they cook up in like a couple of minutes, and they're just delightful. And so they come in these square blocks. They say one block is good for 2 people. One per person, especially if soup is your dinner. So we do 1 per person. So I'm going to cook up 2 tonight. And again, you know, you'll have leftover soup, and you can just whip up the noodles as you need it. You don't want to ever cook the noodles in the soup and store it that way, because the noodles will end up getting soft and mushy. So when I make the soup, I always make the noodles on the side, and you heat up, you know, just run the noodles under some hot water right before you put them into the bowl. It takes the chill out of it. But you don't need to, you don't want to put the noodles right into the soup directly, because it will just get too soft.
Honey, I'm sorry. I turned away from.
Okay, we're going to let it cook a little more. And to these mushrooms, we're going to be adding a little sherry and some tamari. Tamari is, you know, people have said, you know, if you were stranded on an island and you could take 1 spice with you, what would it be? This would be my spice of choice, even though it's not really spice. But tamari is a fermented soy sauce that is wheat-free, so it's gluten-free for those that can't have gluten, as opposed to a regular soy sauce. But it's aged a little bit more, and so it has a deeper umami taste to it, and I use it instead of salt, and I just love it. So keep cooking up these mushrooms till they start getting golden brown.
Vani, did you put garlic in those mushrooms?
I don't want them to burn. And I'm going to add a little bit of the sherry first. And I have to say, you know, I know I've talked about organic wine. The wine I'm drinking is organic, because grapes are on that Dirty Dozen list. The Environmental Working Group, EWG.org, puts out a Dirty Dozen list and a Clean 15 list that I recommend you all become familiar with. It's a great website as well. But they have lists of, you know, what's good dairy, good eggs. Anyway, grapes are on the Dirty Dozen list, which means that they're heavily sprayed, and they're one of the things you really want to try to get organic. But I have not been able to find organic sherry. So this is not organic sherry, but it works. I only need a little drop. I'm not drinking a whole cup of it. But sherry's a little sweeter than most of your red wine. And when you first put it in, it deglazes the pan. So any garlic and ginger that was sticking at the bottom has now released. So I'm going to let that cook a little bit more before I add the tamari. I'm going to add the vegetables in now. I'm going to start by adding my broccoli and my cabbage, which is right here, and the bok choy. And give it a little stir. And if you wanted your soup, if you wanted the broccoli crisp, you can almost take it out right now. Let me show you what it looks like. It's so beautiful. But you definitely want to eat it while it's still bright green. You don't want to let it overcook. So this is what it's looking like. Can you see this? So it's really a beautiful color. My pasta water is boiling now, so I'm going to add my 2 blocks of ramen noodle. And I use 2 forks when I'm cooking that up, just to kind of separate it as it starts getting soft. And mushrooms are cooking up beautifully now. Add a splash of tamari. That's just going to give it its salt.
Bonnie, you said those noodles you get at Whole Foods?
Say that again?
You said the noodles you buy at Whole Foods, that big package?
This big batch I bought at Costco. You can get it at Whole Foods, but you'll pay the same price for half the amount. So I get it again, it's shelf stable, it lasts for a long time. So it's really great. So I buy it at Costco. And when I see it at Costco, you know, anyone who shops at Costco knows if you see something you like, you got to grab it when it's there because it might not be there the next time. So I bought 2 bags of that when I was there the last time. Okay, so I separate the ramen noodles with a fork, 2 forks. My mushrooms are looking great. Let me show you what these are looking like. You see the mushrooms? They're getting golden brown and really getting, you know, taking on all that flavor of the ginger and the garlic. And I'm going to let them cook until all the liquids absorb. Now for the soup, I am going to add first let me put the tofu in. Here's the tofu. We're just going to put it right into the soup. And the wakame. Okay, here's the wakame. I'm just going to go over to the sink and drain out the liquid first, so water. And now the rest of it is going to go right here into my soup. Bring this over again so that you can see this a little bit better. The colors of the soup, they're so beautiful. And we're going to be adding, you see this? See, there we go. There we go. Okay, we're going to add the miso now. So the miso doesn't get cooked. Miso has a lot of nutritional value to it. As a matter of fact, when if you are undergoing chemo or any type of radiation like that, eating miso is medicinally very good to counteract that. So you don't want to let it boil because that kills some of the natural fermentation that's in the miso that makes it so healthy. The bacteria that is in it that is so good for your gut. So I turn the mushrooms off because they're really ready now. I'm just gonna let them sit here and cool. So check my noodles because you don't want to overcook them. You want these to be al dente. You're just gonna let them sit on the side till you are ready. They're gonna go into each bowl separately, just a little bit more. So we're gonna take a bowl. I'm gonna take some miso out, and the quantity of miso is really your choice. I like to use 2 different misos. This is a mellow white miso, and this is a red miso. Some misos are also made with barley. So again, if you have a gluten allergy or you are cooking for anyone that has a gluten allergy, you want to be mindful not to get miso that has barley in it. But this miso is not barley. It's made from soy. So I'm going to take a 1/4 cup of the dark and a 1/4 cup of the white. And the white miso is milder, not as strong a flavor. And I like to balance both of them. So I'm going to sit the miso to the side. Oh, look what I found on the side. My wine. I think it's time for everyone to have a sip. Okay. I'm going to take the motor part of my mini food processor, and I'm going to put an attachment on that's an immersion blender. I'm going to get my ladle. I'm just going to take a couple ladlefuls of broth out of the soup. Remember, once we're adding the miso, we don't want to let the soup boil again. So you have a choice to either, if you're going to save the extra soup, you might not want to save it with the miso in. You might want to add the miso per bowl, the same way we're going to add the miso the same way we're gonna add the noodles per bowl. So I'm just gonna turn my little immersion blender on and mix up this miso. And you do not have to have an immersion blender. You can actually completely just dissolve it, a spoonful with the water in a bowl without a blender. It just makes it a little easier when I'm doing the quantity I'm doing right now. Okay. Set this off to the side. And a lot of this comes together and it's about taste. You're gonna taste it and see if you want more miso or not. Let me taste the noodles and see if they're done. Yeah. I'll just pull out my little strainer, going over to the sink. Excuse me for a minute. Now, one thing, whenever I am pouring boiling water into the sink, I always run cold water at the same time because our pipes are no longer made with metal pipes. We have PVC pipes, which are basically plastic. And if you pour hot water down, it loosens it and you can have leaks underneath your sink. So I always run cold water at the same time. Okay, so now I have my noodles right here. Put our soup together. Let me get my bowls out. So to put the soup together, I'm not going to add my miso because I'm going to have leftovers. So I'm going to put in some noodles to each bowl.
Did you run water over the noodles? Or just empty the pot?
I did not. Actually, that's a good idea to do that. I'm going to do that. Thank you, I forgot. That washes off the starch, and it's a very good idea to do that. Okay. Thank you, whoever that was. Okay, so we're going to put the noodles down into the soup. Then I'm going to add some of the miso. And then I'm going to add some of the vegetable soup. Turn the soup off. Because again, you don't want the vegetables to get overcooked. If you have a piece of ginger, you can just move that out of the way. So what you do want to do though is mix it up and taste the amount of miso that you put into the soup. And so again, if you're doing the whole pot, you know you're cooking for a whole family, you're gonna eat it all at once, go ahead and dump the miso right into the soup pot, but just be mindful not to let it boil. Okay, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more miso to each one. So you can see this miso broth, because I use the dark miso as well, it's a darker color than some of the miso broths that you might get at the store. I mean, at a restaurant. Let me taste it. Oh, it's so good. All right, so now I'm gonna add some of my mushrooms right onto the top. And in the recipe, I also called for this sashimi togagashi, which is really, it's like hot pepper. This is organic, I get it at Whole Foods. It has hot pepper in it, but it also has orange peel in it and lemon. And it's a traditional condiment that a lot of Japanese restaurants serve. I'm gonna put a little bit of this on top. That just makes it a little bit spicy, and a little bit of these salted sesame seeds. also known as gamasio. And the final touch would be just a little bit of cilantro. And that is it. I wish I could have all of you taste this right now. What time is it? Oh, good. We have 5 minutes to make our salad dressing. But this soup is so good. I'm going to have a bite right now, just so I can. Ah, so good with the noodles and everything. It's just, you can feel it healing you as you take a bite. It's just fantastic. Okay, but I'm going to set it aside right now because we're going to eat it in just a little bit. But I went ahead and made myself a little bit of salad because we're going to have salad with it. But I want to show you my salad dressing. And I am not one for measuring most of the time, but let me rinse this out. For the purpose of showing you all, I actually measured. So we're going to do 3/4 cup of olive oil to start. We're going to put that right into my little mini mixer. And with that, we're going to do 1/4 cup of balsamic vinegar. And, you know, I like balsamic vinegar. You use white balsamic vinegar. There's so many delicious vinegars out there now. So feel free to play around with it. I have this pear vinegar that someone gave me as a gift. It's so good. Sometimes I'll use that. So anyway, here's your balsamic vinegar. Then you're going to add some garlic. So I'm going to add 5 cloves. I'm going to add some fresh parsley, which I have right here. I've already washed it and spun it. So I'm just going to take a little handful. Throw that in there. And then mustard. Mustard actually not only gives it flavor, but mustard helps emulsify the salad dressing. And one of the reasons I think people like my salad dressing so much is because it gets thick. All right. And that's it. It's olive oil, balsamic vinegar, garlic, mustard. If you want, you can put nutritional yeast in it. Nutritional yeast, I'll show you what that is. Nutritional yeast is kind of another umami seasoning. A lot of vegetarian cooking uses nutritional yeast to make sauces thicker, to make a mock cheese. When I make popcorn, I put nutritional yeast and salt on it, and it almost makes it like smart food, like the cheddar cheese stuff. Anyway, so you can add this as well as if you want. Okay, I think I would add a little pepper. Let me put a little pepper in here too. And for my salt, again, I use tamari. You can use salt if you prefer. I'm gonna use some tamari. And if it gets really thick, you can also thin it out with some water. But I'm gonna just put this little thing on right here. And you pulse it, like pulsing it helps emulsify. You can see how thick this dressing is right now. But it's such a great dressing. I'm going to add just a tad of water to it to thin it out a little bit. And also it stretches it, makes it a little less calories. And that is it. So here's the dressing. I'm just going to pour a little on my salad. When I'm making salad, I'm usually also adding some seeds to my salads. So I typically add some sprouted pumpkin seeds. And this salad is arugula and baby power greens. That's another thing that I get at Costco. The organic power greens comes in a big bag. And It has baby kale, baby Swiss chard, baby arugula, and it's just delicious. So I make a salad with that. And then this is the salad. And it's so easy to make your own salad dressing, but you know, it's, especially I'm working in schools and people are so into salad bars. And I've seen this where a school will put out a beautiful salad bar and then they put, you know, Heinz, you know, Thousand Island dressing and a ranch dressing, you know, all these dressings that have all these preservatives in them and are not healthy. And it just it's counterintuitive and just kills the whole purpose of serving a healthy salad if you're going to put a horrible salad dressing on it. So making a good salad dressing is really great. So every few weeks I'll add another salad dressing so that we cover a lot. Tofu actually makes a great cream dressing, like I make Russian dressing. If somebody wants Russian dressing, instead of using mayonnaise, you can use tofu for the white part and add ketchup and relish, and you've got a healthy Thousand Island dressing that's just delicious and has no oil in it. So that's a really nice thing too. Anyway, enjoy. My husband loves mushrooms, so since I have these mushrooms, why don't we just add a few mushrooms to our salad as well. Anyone have any questions? We are right on time, and it's 6 o'clock. We have soup and we have salad. Any questions, anybody?
Looks
No?
delicious. It looks delicious, Bhavani.
Thank you. It
Thank
is delicious. I can't wait to eat it.
Thank you, Bhavani.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great meal.
Thank you, dear.
You're welcome.
Be
I'll see you
well.
next week.
Be healthy.
Thank you, everyone.
Where do you find the miso?
You can find it at Whole Foods, and a lot of supermarkets are carrying it now too. Fairway has it.
Like in what section? Like where do you look? In the Asian section?
No, well, some you can find some on the Asian section, but I like the refrigerated ones. So look in the refrigerated area near the tofu.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay? Enjoy, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you.
rest of the evening. Bye.
Bye.